Today's video is sponsored by our good friends over at Mighty Boards. They make our tester boards of choice because they're large and in charge. Don't settle for those small little paint swatches you get at the paint store. Get some tester paint and a Mighty Board because it's going to give you a much better perception of what that paint color is going to look like on your walls. What I love about them is they hold paint really well, and they're resistant to warping and bending, which means they're going to sit flat against whatever surface you're painting them on. Maybe you really love your neighbor's living room color. See if you can borrow some of their touch-up paint that they still have, use it on a Mighty Board, and now you can see what that living room color looks like in your space. Test your colors out before you commit to buying full cans of paint, and Mighty Boards help you do that. Check out your local paint store today to pick some up, and I'll also leave their information in the description down below. Welcome back to the Paint People. I'm James, and today we're talking about living room trends. What's in, what's out, at least according to Insider.com, one of my favorite sites to peruse. So we're gonna go over 7 living room trends that are in, and then 3 that are going to be out or are maybe already out the door. Disclaimer, this is not to bash or even boost the designs that you have and you gravitate towards. I'm gonna be looking at one person's perspective and then also give you my thoughts in real time. So the first thing we're looking at is pastels. Pastels are in bloom. Now I think the crux of this argument for pastels coming back is a departure from non-colors, from grays. And while I do partially agree that a lot of you are sick of gray and neutrals in general, I think we're actually coming to a point where we're even starting to move a little bit past pastels into more vibrant, pure colors. Maybe not necessarily on the couches themselves, because that's kind of a fairly permanent decision. Getting a whole couch a very specific color is a bit limiting, but the surrounding elements, your pillows and your blankets and all that, maybe the flowers you choose to decorate the space with, that can be impacted by the color direction you're going in. If you're into slip covers, then it's a little easier to pick something a little more vibrant color-wise because it's not the couch, it's just the cover of the couch. So while pastels are a nice little transition away from gray into the more bolder colors, I almost prefer to go for tones or grayed out version of colors. It's still muted and a little bit desaturated, but definitely not gray. Next up, brown is gaining popularity as a neutral. While I couldn't agree more that brown is an awesome neutral that adds a lot of value and a lot of just natural earthiness to any design you put it in, I think it's been popular for a while. And I think a big reason for that is the materials that we use day to day, in furniture especially. Brown is present in all of those, from wood to leather to wicker even in a way. And if you have a lot of plant life, that tree bark, it's going to be brown as well. It's a much more nuanced neutral compared to your plain old grays. There's added warmth. And I think warm colors, just generally speaking, are becoming more embraced because they tend to be cozier and more evocative of a homely feeling. So brown, absolutely great in a living room scenario. Maybe not as a wall paint color, but as a couch color, as your flooring colors, coffee tables, end tables, anything like that. Durable, more stain-resistant fabrics are a must. I think the main takeaway from durable fabrics and carpeting just comes from the advancement of technology where you can get really cool, interesting looking things that are actually usable in everyday life. Because things spill, pets exist, babies run around, all kinds of stuff. As time goes on, we have more and more options to work with, which is really cool. And you can also play with different materials like leather and denim, and good old jute is still a classic choice in my mind. Maybe not quite as durable in terms of longevity, but as it starts to wear a little bit, it feels a little more unique to you. Next up, we have poofs. I love poofs, man. I got a couple poofs in my house, and a big part of that is their combination of form and function. They look really fun and cool. They're rounded as well, which is another thing that is taking over design. Not as many geometric, sharp lines and angles. Things are starting to feel a little more soft and curvaceous. And poofs are just that. You can use them as an ottoman, a nice little footstool. You can sit on them. They're easy to move. They're not heavy or cumbersome. There's a lot of benefit to them, and they come in all different textures, colors, fabrics. I think they're a lot of fun, and they just give you a much better alternative to a basic old footrest. This next one I love because I'm kind of experimenting with it in my house. Asymmetrical layouts and designs are in style. So this is a little contrarian to what we know as traditional interior design that is very formulaic, I guess you could say, and everything is nice and even and symmetrical. But asymmetrical layouts, whether by design or by necessity, are becoming more and more popular. I mentioned this before, but upstairs I have a fireplace mantle, and then I have this really cool geometric sort of shelving unit. And I could have got the same one for the other side, but I just left the one side, and it really suits the space. It sort of draws your eye into that one direction rather than seeing this picture perfect symmetrical picture. You don't need that all the time. So I feel validated in my choice because of this article. Awesome. The Japandi trend is on the rise. So I would say Japandi has been on the rise for quite a bit. What I definitely take away from this is more people favoring that Japanese influence into their Scandi designs. So now instead of relying on off-white everything, you can incorporate those richer, darker, more vibrant, deep tones into an otherwise naturalistic Scandinavian Japandi sort of feel. And I think that just all stems from us as a collective being sick of plain old neutral, plain gray, off-white, clean, stark, sterile. Now you can incorporate more color, more richness, different materials, darker woods, all that. I tend to gravitate towards Japandi over traditional Scandinavian design in general, just because it gives you a little more room to play with when it comes to color, and I think that's always a good thing. Next up, living rooms will include more nature. And this is a big one for me. As you can see, even in my studio, I got some nature here, and I think it's a very easy and effective way to add color without having to think about it really. Because when you're incorporating plant life, not only are you getting actual life into the space, quite literally, but you also have the colors of those plants being incorporated, whether it's big leafy greens or beautiful orchids, whatever the case may be. You don't need to worry about matching your plants with your wall color or your couch color. It's just going to exist on its own, and it's going to grow and it's going to change over time, and that's the beauty of it. All right, so enough positivity and, looking to the future. Let's look at the things that are out, the things that maybe aren't so popular. First one being all white interiors. They're falling out of favor, apparently. And I kind of agree with it. The thing about white interiors is they can be a bit overwhelmingly boring. You're taking away one aspect of design, which is color. And when everything is white, you don't really get a good sense of the depth of the space. You can't really add a bunch of layers. You really have to rely on other elements like texture and scale to sort of compensate for that lack of different color hues. There's also the more practical element of keeping it clean. Nothing's worse than an unintentional off-white space. That just means it's dirty. The second one that's out is open concept living rooms. Now, this one's a tough one for me because for a lot of you can't really control the layout of your space, especially if it's architecturally open concept. I think the whole beef with open concept living areas is just the amount of time we've been spending at home these last couple years. People are now gravitating towards a little more separation in their space. A lot of people are working from home now. And if you have an office setup attached to your living area and someone else wants to just hang out in the living room, it's going to be hard to stay productive, especially as a professional working in that open area. And the solution is not building a wall in the middle of your living room. But what you can do is rearrange your furniture to designate different sides of the room. So this is the place where the couch is and the TV is, and then this is more of a productivity side, perhaps, where there's a desk, a workstation, whatever the case may be. Or you can even get those floating room dividers, which is kind of fun as well. But yeah, I'm not going to criticize anyone for just having an open concept living room. And finally, the minimalism trend is fading. And while I do agree that your more stereotypical idea of minimalism is kind of not a thing anymore, I feel it has evolved. So we can approach it a bit differently. So instead of having nothing in your home, you can just be more intentional with your choices rather than just having a bunch of clutter everywhere. Warm and cozy minimalism. How's that? If you could start from scratch right now, what would your ideal living room setup be? If you had an unlimited budget, what might it look like? From living rooms to bathrooms, here are some more interior design trends. Subscribe to stay up to date with our 6 videos a week. And also you can support us even further by joining us as a channel member. The Paint People is a family-run business. I do this full-time now. We really appreciate your support.